solution-focused approaches to students and clients through both individual and group therapies for over 17 years. And the Resilience Centre in supervises, psychologists and coordinates community seminars, training, workshop and resilient groups for all ages. Many of you had the opportunity to meet some of the psychologists from the Resilience Centre last year, as they were many of our facilitators in the workshops that we had. Lyn and the team from Alpha Psychologists at the Resilience Centre have also recently opened an eating disorders clinic using family intervention model for effective change with young adolescents. Lyn is the author of The Resilience Donor, a pioneering model showing the strong contexts where resilience is enhanced both during development and throughout our adulthood. The Resilience Donor has become a foundational ecological model of resilience used by practitioners all around Australia and is quickly spreading to countries including Japan, Canada, South Africa and the UK. The work of the Resilience Donor across a whole school builds student and staff awareness of the coping resources available and enhances a whole organisation of resilience. To date, the Resilience Donor has worked directly with over 120 state and private schools to build the resilience of students, staff and their communities, and over 30 organisations through training, welfare and HR. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lyn Worsley to the stage.
Jason talked about a line along this podium here. Over here is the problems. Over here is the situations when you spend a lot of your time, which is sort of like, it's interesting. It's interesting to look at people's problems. It's much more interesting. We actually get off on it. But over here is where we want to be able to look at the preferred future. Over here is where we see our students flourish, where we ourselves flourish as teachers and professionals. So when I'm going to talk to you today, I'm going to tell you some stories, some practical stories, stories that are real, but I've changed the names and the details of the stories just so it suits you a little bit better. And what I'm going to talk to you about is looking for strengths. How do we find what works in the stories that I tell you? I have three cases. Each of them are very different. Each of them may be in schools as that you have. But each of them also have situations that could be going towards this direction or this direction. When I'm working with people, one of the things I'm really conscious about is that you can be anywhere along this spectrum. Anywhere. But it is the difference that you make in terms of what direction you're facing. If you're dealing with someone who is immersed in a whole lot of difficulties, if you're facing in that direction, you're going to be able to have conversations and have interactions with them that help them to move in this direction. If you're facing in this direction, you're going to end up with more of the same. And it is us that makes the difference to be able to turn them around. Let's start with Tanya. Tanya's in year 7, she's 12. Tanya's got a little bit of a different background. She's come from a school out at Blacktown. She's come to the Northern Beaches and she finished her schooling, almost finished it. She missed the last 2 weeks of school at her in year 6. Because her mum picked her up from school and in her car she had all the bags packed. She picked up her sister and herself and they both came to the Northern Beaches very quickly. You see, there'd been a lot of domestic violence in her family, and it was quite normal to lie in bed at night with her and her brothers and her sister, where they'd be just very quietly listening and trying to pretend they were asleep because they knew that Mum was being hit. Now, Tanya just thought that was normal because no one ever spoke about it. No one said anything about the bruises that Mum had the next day. No one said anything, not even her brothers or her sister. So they just went on as though it was normal. Tanya's the youngest. So one afternoon, Tanya just got picked up by her mum, and in the car was all the stuff. And they just came in the car, drove straight out to Narrabeen, where Grandma lived. She didn't ask. She wished she had asked why, because she didn't actually get to go to that Year 6 farewell, and she didn't get to do all of the final stuff that she had with her friends in Year 6. And she started school at the end of January at a girls' school, and she's never been to high school before, let alone being in a school with a whole lot of girls. So there's Tanya. She comes to school, she's got her head down, she's feeling really, really awkward. She doesn't quite know what to do with this school. Her sister's also at the school. But one of the things that Tanya used to do when she was at home was that she used to sing. She used to go for a run and she used to sing. And so what she decided she'd do when they moved to their little place in DY, she decided she'd go running along the beach and she'd try and sing. But what happens is she'd start to sing and she'd just start crying. And so she'd sit in the corner somewhere along the beach and just cry. But then she'd get to school and she'd try really hard to make friends, but everyone said she sort of spoke differently and they called her a Westie. So she didn't speak, she tried really hard to keep quiet, and so she just kept her head down. When someone spoke to her, she just kept her head down. And when the teacher wanted her to do some work, she just kept her head down and she was really quiet and she was compliant. She did everything that she needed to do. And then what happened was that Tanya decided that she really liked to do some music, but she didn't know how to ask. So she hung around the music department's staff room. And when she hung around that staff room, she just waited for the music teacher to walk in and out that she liked. She didn't say anything, she just stayed there. Now, Tanya's also got a sister at the school, and her sister's struggling as well, but because they've learned over all these years to keep things quiet that are problems, they just kept it quiet. They didn't say anything. So they didn't know that they were unhappy. And Mum's got a job, by the way. Mum's actually working in a cafe, and she's doing really well, and they've never seen Mum so happy. So we could look at what's happening with Tanya. What's likely to happen for her? What is likely to be her future from here on? What we will see, if we just kept looking at some of the things that are going for Tanya, we could look at all the problems and we could focus on that. We could see that there she is, trying really hard to do what she needs to do to get through, but she is struck by incredible loneliness. She's been taken away from her friends and family. She'd go to school for a while and might come to about, term 2, and she's sort of missing a few days because she's been sick. She's worked out that it's actually easier just to pretend you go to school and just go back home. And after a while comes to term 3, and we start to have school refusal. It's worked out it's much easier not to be at school. And then by term 3, she's starting to have some failures in class because she really hasn't been at school as often, and because she's feeling so down, she doesn't really get to do the work that she needs to do. The tipping point for Tanya is that when she starts to decide to go to school and try harder, anxiety sets in. She gets nervous every time she starts to talk to somebody, and so she has some little panic attacks, and that makes her feel sick, and she doesn't want to tell Mum, doesn't want to worry Mum, and so she starts to get depression. Now we can spend all our time sending her to counsellors and getting her into some sort of welfare program that will focus on the depression and the anxiety and help her to cope with her now diagnosed anxiety disorder. And we can also spend a lot of time trying to get her back to school, and that's the focus of all our therapy. Or we could think differently. What if we thought differently about Tanya? What if we actually spent some time looking at what her strengths were? And if we saw her strength, we might see that we actually have a significant strength right there with her sister. Her and her sister have been through some significant challenges. And they should be fairly close because they're in a little unit together. We also know that Tanya likes to run, and she runs on the beach. and she loves the outdoors. We also know, too, that Tanya has a head for music. She's drawn to it. She loves music. In fact, she used to write songs, and she used to sing them to herself. And one time she wrote it right down and recorded it on her phone. At the school, there's also what we know is that there is a teacher in the music department who she hangs around and watches at the staff room. We also know, too, that she has the most courageous mum. Now, Tanya has a lot of strengths. Now, if we spend some time trying to link those strengths, what do you think we might be able to do? What would happen if we linked those strengths? Well, let me tell you what happened. What happened is that Tanya hung around that staff room. What happened is that she hung around the staff room to the point where the teacher noticed her and said, "Hi, what's your name? Can you give me a hand? I need some help taking some stuff down to set up for choir. Do you want to come with me?" So she did, quietly, didn't say anything, just told her what her name was. Then the music teacher then just noticed that she was there the next time. Said, "Oh, can you help me again? That's great, having some extra hands. Would you like to join the choir? Do you like to sing?" Tanya doesn't reply, she keeps her head down. So she comes along, she helps, sets up chairs, the music teacher just keeps on. "Tanya, come on, I need some help. I need some more help. Can you help me do some photocopying?" And she just hung around. Now that teacher then started to notice that Tanya was singing along in the choir practice. And in the choir practice, what she did was that she started to sing to the point that the teacher could hear her. So she joined the choir. Her sister also joined the choir when she started talking about it at home, and they sang in harmony at home with their mum. There started to be a connection there that the mum said, "I love singing too." Remember, we used to be in a choir, and then we used to be in a choir that said that when I was at school as well, so let's join a community choir, and the community choir had some parents from the school. So we all of a sudden had some connections that occurred that meant that they were in this direction. Do you think it changed the circumstances? Well, no. They were still struggling. But do you think it made a difference? Yes. It made the world of difference because they were beginning to pick up the strengths that they had in order to move towards the preferred future. Let's have a look at Karen. Karen's in Year 12. Karen has a difficulty at the moment because, you know what? One of the things about Karen is that her family has said that she's really smart. She's going to be the smart one. She's going to be the one that gets into medicine. She's going to be our prodigy. She's the wonderful one in the family. And so Karen has this pressure on her to perform. And when she goes to school, she's trying really hard to keep everyone happy. But Karen does not like the subjects that they say she's going to have to do to get into medicine. She loves art. In fact, Karen has got the most amazing artwork. But one of the things that happened with Karen is that what happened is that she was so particular about her artwork, is that she decided one day, 2 days before it was due in for the major work, to destroy it. And when she destroyed her artwork, she was in such a state that she decided then that she could not manage to cope any longer. And so what she did was that she dropped the ball with her work, with her schoolwork, and all of the things that were going with that. There was lots of pressure for her. She had lots of friends. They wanted to ask her to parties. They wanted to bring her over and get her to come over and get out of the shell, but she just stayed under the doona. And panic attacks started to step in, and she started to be able to not be able to even manage school. So they started sending schoolwork home to her so she could study. If we look at the problems that Karen's going through, we start to see the anxiety, we start to see this perfectionistic side of her coming through. And we could treat all of these things. We see that she's experiencing failure, and we know that she's not going to be able to manage the HSC. We also could spend a lot of time trying to deal with her shame and the depression. We could book her into some counselling, and we could put some things in place to prepare her for the terrible things that are about to happen to her. Because, you know what, in December everyone's going to ask her at Christmas, what did she get? And everyone's going to be waiting for her in January to see if she manages to get through. So she withdraws from everyone. Now that's what happens when we deal with the problems. But what if we looked at what was working for Karen? What if we looked at her and we started to see that actually she has this group of friends that she's been with since year 8, and they've stuck together, and some of these friends are in a point where they just keep connecting and doing things. And even though she's withdrawn from them, she also has a family, despite the fact that they're putting a bit of pressure on her. They love her and they want the best for her. She also has an incredible ability. Her artwork is magnificent, and she is a true artist. One of the other things that we didn't realise is that she also has this creativity. She doesn't just stick with one way of doing her art. She's managing to go across a lot of different mediums. She's unique in the way she approaches her artwork, but as well as that, she has an aunt. An artistic aunt who took her to Melbourne one time, and they managed to do some work in Melbourne on the streets in a little workshop that was just random. And at that time, her aunt saw that she did a drawing or a painting that was magnificent. Now, what if we linked some of the strengths? What if we found those strengths and we put them together? How will we use those strengths to move towards a preferred future for Karen? What we could do, and this is what happened, what Karen did. What happened is actually that her aunt has a studio, and her aunt also has a studio where she runs some art shows every now and then. So she put in Tanya's piece of work that she did on the streets in Melbourne, and she just put it up, and her friends came to visit and have a look at the art, and they all started carrying on about how wonderful Karen was. And with Karen, what she did was that she started to feel a little bit better. But what also happened was that her aunt said, I've been asked to come to London to an art school, and I'd like you to come with me straight after the HSC, and I'll be gone for December and January. At that time, they decided to go off to London. She went with her aunt. Her aunt showed some of the work that she had. Her aunt was offered a position at the college, and Karen was also offered a position as a student at the college. 3 years later, she's now thinking of doing her master's there and has been offered a tutorial position. That was working on her strengths. Let's look at Toby. Toby has attitude. He's in year 9. He has lots of attitude. In fact, he's sent out of school quite often, and what happens with Toby when he's sent out of school, they just put him outside the classroom and he just is bored. He swears at the teachers a lot. He doesn't like any of the teachers and thinks they're all idiots. Except for one. One teacher's pretty good. He's the maths teacher, but he also takes sport. He takes Toby for soccer. Soccer's his favourite sport. In fact, Toby's actually quite good. Toby's parents run a restaurant, and they have a restaurant where they actually have gone into a lot of debt to run this restaurant, and they're now serving breakfast, lunch and dinner, and both parents are working in that restaurant to try and make ends meet. Her older sister's now working there 4 days a week. And so when Toby comes home from school, there isn't anybody there. When Toby comes home from school, what he finds is that he's on his own a lot. So he just wanders the streets. If we actually look at what's happening for Toby, what we can see is that Toby has got some problems with schoolwork. And on the surface, it might look like he's distracted, maybe we need to investigate whether he has ADHD. If we focus on the problems, what we'll also do is that we'll start thinking about whether he's maybe got a conduct disorder of some sort. We also might think about whether he has behaviour problems, and those behaviour problems, of course, might be linked to some learning difficulties. And we'll have to investigate all of that. And of course, Toby's getting a lot of messages about those learning difficulties. Toby's really feeling a little bit bored. Because when he gets home, there's nobody there. When he wanders the streets, there's not always a lot of things happening. He might be able to play soccer with some of the guys, and he hangs out with a group of guys, and they're really good mates. But he starts to miss school, because why should he be there anyway? And as well as that, there's a bit of a gang thing happening. He's working out who's in and who isn't. Now that's likely to happen for Toby, but what if we went back to Toby's strengths and looked at what was working for Toby? What if we just concentrated on finding the strengths and linking those strengths? And let's see what was working for Toby. We know that he's good at soccer. We know that he has good soccer skills. So much so that he's really valued in the soccer team. We know that there's a maths teacher that he really likes, who's also his sports teacher. We also know that that sports teacher is going out to bat for Toby, and we know that the sports teacher is saying we need Toby to play with the game on Wednesday because he will help us to win the game, but he's on detention. Can we move his detention so it doesn't take over that game? We need him in the team. We also know that there's a community team going on that Toby does like to play in. Toby has also an advocate in his grandma. His grandma watches every game. She doesn't know that he's in trouble at school. She just thinks he is wonderful. So what happens when we connect the strengths for Toby? Well, this is what happened when we connected the strengths. What happened was that the sports teacher successfully managed to change his detention to another day so he could play the game. Toby scored the winning goal. And people knew that, and at school people were starting to say, oh, maybe he's not so bad after all. What also happened was that Grandma went along to the game, and she was so excited about that game. And as a reward, she got him, paid for him to then do his referee course. That was the turnaround process for Toby. What that meant was he was able to do his referee course. The sports teacher went, beauty, I've got someone to help me with the junior team, and I'm going to be able to take him somewhere with me. And as well as that, there's a year 6 primary students wanting to have a coach, and I'll see if Toby can do that. Toby was more interested in soccer. Did it change his maths? Yes, he did really well in maths. Did it change any other subjects? Not really. But he turned up, and he didn't have any more detentions, and he didn't have any more suspensions. So yes, it turned around, and there was a bit of a difference happening. So when we start looking for strengths, what we are doing is that we're having an eye for working on what works. And there are some key things for you as teachers to know that to be doing all the time. What you need to do is to start thinking about what are the exceptions to the problem. The problem is here. There's a whole lot of stuff, and it's interesting for us, and it engages us, but what is it that's working? Just the little glimpses of that. Then we start looking for what is it about those exceptions? Investigate how those exceptions flourish. Almost like where is it working, as well as what's working. Then start thinking about who is the child's best advocate in those strengths. Who believes in the child? Who is the one that's going to give them the most positive information? And then try and work out how you can orchestrate those strengths to connect in some way. Because when you have a connection of strengths, you flood the brain with a whole lot of information that's fantastic. What we're trying to do is create opportunities for positive deviance. We want deviant behaviour, we want it to be deviant in the positive. We want, if things are going in this direction, we need to turn it around so it's positively deviant. What we also need to do is build on what's already working. When you find what's already working, do more of the same. But a paramount thing here is that don't sacrifice the positive. If we had taken Toby's final goal away, that would have meant it was the worst thing for him. So when we look at the strengths, what we're doing is we're working on what's already working and what works. When we focus on what works, we can make the biggest difference. And we have the tools right in front of us if we only just start looking for them. Thank you.